All right, let's get started. I said that already. Make sure we're recording. We are. Okay. ORM. Definition, please. Anyone? Matt, what's an ORM? Object relational mapping. Anybody have an alternate definition? Neither do I. That's a pretty good one. That's what it stands for. Object relational mapping. Does anybody want to put into regular words what that means? Anyone who's bold and daring this Tuesday morning? Alec?
It's converting rows in a data table into objects in Ruby.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And we are talking very specifically about database tables, in this case SQLite 3 database tables, and a programming language where we have classes, in our case Ruby. Object relational mapping can be more abstract than that, so it could be mapping sort of any objects into whatever storage of information we have. So just understand that ORM is a very sort of abstract term. It can be applied to a whole bunch of different ways of storing data across a lot of different applications. In our case, we're like Alex said, we're talking about Ruby and SQLite 3 databases and how we map those. So that's our definition. So let's talk about how it works. Does anybody want to take a stab? Basically, I'm looking for 4 things here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Basically, I'm going to say that there are 4 ways that we can describe object relational mapping with regard to Ruby and our database. Anybody want to give a shot and think of at least one of them? Alec already kind of touched on it. Zach?
So Ruby classes will become database tables.
Exactly, that's one way. Ruby classes become database tables. Good. What else? I'm going to go ahead and write out database. I don't want to do shortcuts here. I always forget to make it bigger for you guys. Please shout out, like if you can't read that, or you're in the back row, you're like, why doesn't he just make it bigger for us? Just say, please make it bigger. So Ruby classes become database tables. Each table is a representation of a Ruby class. Good. What else?
The object's attributes become rows.
Object attributes. No. Object attributes become what? Columns. What then? You already said it. What become rows? And I'm going to say, what kind of objects? Let me be a little more specific. You're right. You're exactly right. Instances. Instantiated objects. Instances or instantiated objects become rows. Does that make sense? Everybody clear on that? Okay. And finally, what's our 4th? This would be sort of 1, 2, 2, 3. I'm really good at counting. What would be? There's one more thing that I like to say, which I don't know if it, does anyone know the 4th thing that I have in my mind? Who's got ESP or who can come up with it? Think bigger, larger, better, shinier, newer. Just kidding about the last one, but seriously, bigger. Think on a larger scale.
You establish a constant as a connection to the database.
That does have to happen, yes. And we could put that. We have to have a database connection, but I'll say that's not the representation I'm looking for. Just basically what I'm trying to say is that the state of our application is represented by what? The entire database. So the entire database represents the state of our entire application. Does that make sense? So we have an application, and the database represents the entire state of our application. This is a bit of review, but why do we even need a database? What happened like last week when we spun up our little classes and we were inside of a Pry console and we built objects and they were beautiful? Why do we even need these stupid databases anyway?
Too much information.
We talked about this last week. Too much information? No, we could stand here for hours and put thousands and millions of objects into local runtime memory.
But then you can't really manage and
We can manage the crap out of it.
okay, never mind.
But what happens when I hit Command Q? What happens when I turn off my computer?
Can't save it.
What's that?
Can't save it.
Yes, can't save it. What's that P word I'm looking for?
Persistent.
Persistence. Okay, we don't have data persistent unless we have some way of storing it, and the solution that we find that's most efficient, that's best, because it's built exactly for this, is to use databases. Everybody cool with where we are right now? Anybody have any questions about that? This needs to be like crystal clear going forward. Is anybody a little hazy about anything we've talked about? You can shout out. There's no. Anybody have any questions? Everybody feeling good? Cool. So let's talk a little bit about Ruby, and this is still review. Rob talked about this yesterday. Let's briefly talk about CRUD actions and what sort of maps to, or how we represent these actions typically in Ruby and in SQL. So in Ruby, how do we create something? What's typically what we use? Initialize. I'm just going to this is going to be kind of like a little list. So initialize, right? What else? What else do we say? Initialize is the method that gets called when?
So when we make the object and we save, I guess?
Okay, save is definitely something that we have to consider. What else? Create is what? Create, sure. Yeah. And what can I say here on this same line as line 15? New. I'm going to put. Why am I putting those together? Right. When we say such and such Ruby, class.new, we're actually calling the initialize method. Good. How about reading? How do we read data in Ruby?
Attribute readers.
Yeah, attribute readers. Okay. How about updating? Adder setters or adder writers. Good. And how about deletion?
Clear.
We could, yeah, it depends on how we're representing our data, right? If our data is just living inside of an array, then we might just have to delete a piece of an array. So I'm just going to say delete. We might make a delete function, a delete method. So we'll look at this in a little bit more. So this is a very abstract overview. This is non-specific, as you can see. It's not like we're writing out the methods. We will get to that in a second. But let's talk about SQL. What corresponds with create in SQL? Insert. Yeah, I'm just kind of looking for keywords. I'm just kind of like getting us caught up to where we should be. Insert is good. Yep. Create. Anything else for create?
Create table?
We could create the table too, right? And that would be kind of like setting up our environment in Ruby, right? If we're trying to look at parallels. Insert into, I'll just say, how about reading? Select, good. How about updating? Update, what else do we have to put there? What's that? Modify table would be, if we were trying to change, you mean alter table? If we try and change the table? But in terms of updating a particular instance, what's our sort of pattern? Update. What is it? Update table. Does anybody look it up? There's kind of a two-part. This is kind of a two-parter. We need a couple of keywords acting together. Set. What else? Set's kind of like the second half, right? Update. And then set. And then we usually have to, if we're updating something specific, we usually need a third part of that, I guess. Where, right? And this would where needs to look at where should be finding what type of, this is kind of an abstract question, but what do we need, what should this where be looking for? Something that's what? An attribute of an instantiated object that is truthy, yeah, it should be there, but it also needs to be what? In other words, if we're going to find a very specific object, then whatever we're looking for here on the where clause needs to be unique. Should where attribute. That makes sense? Everybody kind of with us right now? We good? We feeling okay? All right, so what I have here is I've got our Chinook database that Rob's been playing with. And it looks like this. I'm sorry. How about this? Can everybody read this okay? Just a little database humor, guys. Nobody can. If you can read that, you don't belong in this class. You're like Neo, and you're like, whoa, I see fans and artist IDs. No, that's just a database file. That's just a little joke. So if we want to, I can spin up our, our DB browser for SQLite. And I can open this database. I'm going to have this running in the background here. Development, code, your cohort again, this guy, and that guy. Cool. And now we can see over here, this is our table. Can you guys see that okay? So this is this weird giant table that we've been playing with, and we can do all kinds of cool things to it now that we're connected to it. Now, what I'm going to do first is talk about our file structure. Well, actually, what I'll first do is talk about what we're going to do. So what we're going to do is talk about how our methods now, our classes, instead of just dealing with Ruby objects and runtime, now we're going to be interacting with the database. So if you notice, writing a whole bunch of SQL can get a little bit tedious, and it's kind of like we're floating in the middle of nowhere, just sort of creating all this SQL like we've been doing the last couple of days. But wouldn't it be nice if we can write some methods that write the SQL for us, that save and update and do whatever it is we need to do to the database for us without having to write anything else, and package these things into methods and call them? Wouldn't that be nice?
Yes.
Wouldn't it be nice if we could do this, right? We can. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to start with our fan class, and I kind of have a random hodgepodge of stuff already pre-built here that we're going to build off of. And then we'll talk about, depending on how far we get, we can maybe use a different class. We can reset one of these classes. We can reset these tables. And possibly, if we get really far today, we'll even build a join table and interact with it. That's going to be kind of a stretch goal. I don't know if we're going to get there. Okay? My goal by the end of today is that you are all comfortable, besides being able to speak the English language, my goal is that you will all be comfortable understanding how to build a Ruby class that interacts with the database, and you're able to build at least the basic CRUD methods that correspond that you're able to build the CRUD methods on the class that write to the database. That make sense? Okay. By a show of hands, how many people have already done this in the labs and like, this is review? Cool. How many people are like, this is a little bit ahead of where I am, and I'm a little bit confused, but I'm trying to hang on for dear life. Okay, cool. I want you guys to please ask questions. I know it's hard to when you haven't got somewhere and you're like, I don't even know what question to ask. Please ask anyway. I guarantee you someone else has the same question, and I guarantee you that no, I make no guarantees, I guess. But if I answer your question, chances are, even if someone else kind of already understood it, maybe we can clarify or improve that concept. So you guys are a quiet class. That's why I'm reiterating. I really like the questions because I can't believe that you're all just like, that's right, I know that.
Is there somewhere to fork for this?
No, I don't. I haven't pushed this yet. I could push it. But what I'd rather do is I'd rather you guys interact with me right now in class, not your computers. And once the class is over, you can fork this down and play with it all you want. Does that make sense? That's why I haven't pushed this up yet. This is going to be kind of live right now. Okay. That was my drum roll. So first I'm going to talk about this file structure because hopefully it looks a little weird to some of you. Does it? Is anyone like, what is app? What's bin? What's...
Can you make it larger?
I don't think actually the file structure grows.
I don't think
Yeah, it's stupid. I agree with you, but I can't make the files bigger.
Oh, can you try like pinching with your fingers in your mouth pad? Maybe that'll work. Pinching or expanding.
It's a little trickier than that. You have to.
Wiki.
Styles can pick up. Okay. We'll talk about that.
Is anybody, can everybody kind of read that at least somewhat? Squint a little, I'm sorry, I apologize. All right, so I don't have a lot going on here, but I do want to go through it because I think it's important you guys understand what's going on. You're going to see, some of these you're going to see as conventions, and some of them you'll see tweaked as we go. But it is pretty common that you'll see an app folder. And the app folder kind of, right now, all it's holding is our models. Okay, and by the way, what I'm building here in Ruby, I don't have all 1187 tables and all the stuff from this one. I'm just kind of picking and choosing. Like right now, I just have fans. We can add to that. What's a bin file? You guys should know that by now. Alec?
Can you do command option plus?
I don't know. I can try. It's command, option, plus.
No. It will allow you to zoom in and show stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I can zoom in this one until you can only see one word at a time. But I can't seem to get the file tree bigger. So we'll follow up on that later. How about bin file? What do you typically see inside of a bin file? Bin folder.
Run file.
Run file. Okay. So what does that even mean?
So it's kind of like boss file. Like it's like the first domino and it runs basically everything.
I love that metaphor. It's like the first domino. All I'm going to do is kick off run, and it's going to do a whole bunch of other stuff. So let's look at what's inside of there. Run. There's not a lot. Not a lot going on here. What is going on? Is anybody? It's 2 lines of code. Require relative config environment.rb and pry.start. Does anybody want to give a 30-second, less than that, a quick explanation of what's going on there? Alec?
I think what it's doing is kind of importing the environment file so you can use the functions from the stuff that's in environment
Okay.
in there.
Okay, I think you're right. And? What's line 3 do? Pry kicks off, what's pry?
Debugger.
Yeah, it's a debugger. It's going to kick off a pry session, which basically means I'm going to jump into my console, and inside that console I'm going to have access to everything that I've built so far. Right? Has anybody have you guys read about rake tasks yet? Yes, no, nod, shake, something? Move your head around, stretch your neck. So we won't worry about that just yet. I could build a rake task, and write like rake console and jump into pry that way, but right now I'm just running pry.start. So let's look at this config environment file. What in the world's inside of here? There's some really important stuff here. What's going on here? Lines 2 and 3 should be really familiar. What am I doing there? What's that? Yes, I'm saying these gems I want. In fact, I'm kind of doing this two ways, which is a little bit redundant. I have a gem file that I'm requiring, and I also have requiring these gems here because I did this at different times. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Let's get to lines 7 and 8. What is happening there? This is really important. Someone besides Alec. Alec, I'd love hearing from you, but somebody else speak up. Anybody? Mom?
So it's creating a new database in the file structure where new is specified, and then where it results hash is new says that when you retrieve information from the database, give it to me as a hash.
Right. Okay. So that's all true. Let's go back and talk about line 7 and pick it apart just a little bit more. What did you say this does? Line 7?
It basically tells SQL to use its database option to create a new database, and the new database will be where that's specified inside the quotes.
Good. So this is the database that we're referring to, which we already have. But does anybody want to try and pick apart this bit here? SQLite 3 : database.new. What in the world is that? You don't. By the way, I don't expect you guys to be able to explain this perfectly. Does anybody want to just give it a shot? Dan?
So it's calling a new class of database, which is defined in the SQLite gem.
Well, yeah. Okay. Yes. So that's. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to give you a lot of credit on that answer. Database.new implies that database is what? Well, the whole thing is a new, exactly. The whole thing, this guy is a new instance of the database class. So basically DB is an instance now of our database class. What about this part? What does that mean?
Is that like almost piping that from Ruby to SQLite or something?
So what we're seeing here is module namespace. So SQLite 3, SQLite 3. SQLite 3 is a module, and this module contains a whole bunch of stuff, including classes, including a class called database. And basically what I'm saying is maybe there's some other class out there called database. Maybe I built a class called database, but I don't want any of that. What I want is the one coming from SQLite. I want an instance of SQLite's specific database class. And that's what I'm going to create here. So this entire thing becomes an instance of the database class that lives inside of the SQLite 3 module. And I'm packing it into an instance variable here, which is also a constant. That's why it's capitalized. Everybody okay with that? Chris?
It's one of those questions where I don't really know how to ask it.
Sure.
Where is the SQLite 3 module kept directory?
In the SQLite gem. So that's why, yeah, a lot of times it'll seem like we're pulling these modules and classes out of thin air. And you can usually check your gem file and see, and as long as people are nice, you usually can see the namespacing and tell where stuff's coming from.
I actually have a note because I fiddled with this a little bit. You can actually, in a hidden folder, actually access the actual file that contains the class definition if you really want to.
Yes, and you can also look them up. A lot of Ruby gems are open source and available for everyone to see, and you can just go to GitHub too and check out the entire source code, which I recommend as an activity to do sometime. Like just go in and look around and see what kind of gibberish you can make out and what you can't, what's over your head, what's like, oh my gosh, I know how to do this because I learned it yesterday at Flatiron. Okay. All right, so we're kind of on a little bit of a tangent here, but I just want this to be clear. Cool, and Mohammed absolutely hit the nail on the head with line 8. Basically, all this is doing is saying, well, can someone actually, what is this results as hash? What kind of what is that? What must that be? What kind of method? You're right.
Like a class method, maybe?
Why is it not a class method? I mean, why is it a class? No.
Oh, it's an instance.
Okay, so it's a little bit confusing because DB is capitalized, but DB is an instance. So this is an instance method saying that for this instance of our database, which we're calling DB, we're gonna call this, which is also a setter method of sorts, right? Results as hash, whatever that is, we're gonna set that to true. And in this case, like Mohammed said, it means that we're gonna get back hashes instead of nested arrays. Cool. So let's kind of get to it. I feel like I've talked a lot here. It's enough talking. All right, I'm going to keep talking, actually. Sorry. All right, so that was our config file. Gemfile.lock. I'm not going to get into it, but gemfile.lock basically locks up our the versions of the gems that we have in our gem file once we run bundle. I'm not going to really get into it too much. Let's get started. So, like I say, I kind of built a little bit of a random array of methods inside of our fan class. So let's kind of talk about them a little bit. Let's see where we want to start. Let's first look at this initialize method. So this looks similar to what you guys have seen before, right? I'm going to say there's another way we could do this. I'm going to write a little comment here. Okay, so right now, this fan class, if you remember, only has a name and an artist ID. It's pretty simple to keep track of. But what if I wanted to do something like this, where our attributes our fan attributes are coming as a hash. Suppose that this thing we want to instantiate it with like 37 attributes. How could we build this to still work kind of the same way? Anybody want to take a guess? Has anybody seen this before? So in other words, this would look something like, in our case, this is very simple, very small. We could say name our artist ID, I don't know, 34. Kenny, you want to give it a shot?
You just say add name equal to and attributes bracket name. And then similar for artist ID.
Cool. What do you guys think? Would that work? Thank you. Making things worse before we make them better. Okay. What do you guys think? Would this work? Cool. What's nice? Can anyone think of an advantage of doing it this way? So like in our previous, if we just pass in one at a time, we have to be really careful of what? The order. Is that what you said? I thought that's what you said. Yes, the order. How about if I pass in a hash? Does the order matter? No. I could have name Howard artist ID 34. I could have artist ID 34 name Howard. And once you have 100 attributes, it's really nice to be able to say, this attribute is that value, period. There's no ambiguity, and I don't have to worry about like setting 34 things in the right order. I don't like to say number 34. Here's my lottery ticket. Okay? Does that make sense? So I just want to make sure that we're all clear on this alternate way of initializing something. It doesn't really matter right now which way we do it per se, but we can go back and forth or however we want. So the first thing I've built here for you guys to see, actually let's talk about what's going on here. Kind of want to zoom in and talk about one method at a time. Does anybody understand or recognize or can talk about this syntax here?
So you're creating a variable drop table.
I'm creating a variable called drop table. So you want that in 1,000.
Line 17 is a Ruby string, and you're setting drop table equal to that.
Okay, well what's going on with less than, dash, SQL, and then this SQL with that?
That's SQL.
It stands for SQL, and the code inside is SQL. But so let's be more generic. What is this thing? What if I go like this? Oh man. Noah, what's your favorite ice cream flavor? Green tea ice cream. Okay. Will that work? What do you guys think? Sure it will. It'll work just fine. What you put here is arbitrary asterisk. It's arbitrary in that it will work. What we have here, sorry guys, does anyone know the name for it? It rhymes with, yeah?
It's a here dog.
It's a here doc, okay? We're saying we need a doctor, and here's one right here. It's called here doc. I'm actually not entirely sure the history of the name. Anyone can chime in if you know it. But basically, we're saying like right here is this document, which basically is going to be a string of some sort. And what it means is that I want to basically put a string that's formatted in a certain way that's not Ruby code, and it's probably going to be some other language. The nice thing about Ruby is if I do name it appropriately, what does it do? In other words, suppose I named this HTML. Yeah. And then instead of this guy, whoa, that's not what I wanted to do. Sorry. What's going to happen here?
Format it properly.
It'll format it and color code it for us, right? If I do like JavaScript, could do the same thing. And I said something like const my func equals some function. We'll see that this gets color coded, right? Everybody okay with this? So if we use the appropriate name, in this case SQL, then Ruby says, hey, I know what kind of HereDoc you're making, and I'll color code it for you. How's that? So it is arbitrary. It will work with whatever, but it's nice to put the correct, the corresponding language that you actually want to write, which I do need to fix that. I guess it doesn't matter, actually. It's not complaining. Anyway, this way, this is our opener. It's just less than dash, and then whatever you want to put here, usually it's going to be the name of a language, and we close it by just repeating this, if you want to call it variable, I'm not sure what we'd actually call it, the title of it here. And then besides the hash there, and this will become our string, okay? And so I've created two HereDoc variables. One holds each one holds a different command, and all I'm doing. What am I doing here? Anybody want to give it a stab? Like just kind of describe what I'm doing? Alec?
You're saving the SQL command as a string
Yeah.
to the variable drop table.
Yep. And then what?
You're later executing it on the class object or the SQL white object DB.
Say that last part again.
On the database object DB.
Yes, I'm calling this execute is a method on the database instance or inside of the database class that allows me to insert SQL strings. I could just put the string right inside of here if I wanted to. Drop table if exists fans, right? If I wanted to, I could do it just like that, and that would work too. But it's a lot nicer usually to it's a lot nicer to pack them into a HereDoc variable and execute them this way. There's a couple advantages to that. One is you get nice color coding. You can see, you can read a little bit better. There are other advantages too that we'll kind of talk about here hopefully in a minute. Did anyone notice I just changed the name of this method, and does anyone know why? Why was that a bad name, reset database?
Because there might be other tables in the database.
Yeah, in fact, we know there are. There's like I gotta quit saying 34, 3, 6, 9, 12, I don't know, something around 15 tables there. And I'm only resetting one of them, so I'm really not resetting the whole database. So it makes a lot more sense to say reset fan table. I like that better. Okay? So I built this method that's just gonna reset my fan table. So let's talk about let's kind of go back to our initialize. If I want to say fan.new, right now I'm initializing an instance on the Ruby side of things, but what's missing? ID is missing. Okay, cool. But if I make this thing inside of, so let's just see. Well, before I write anything, if I build this object inside of our Ruby runtime console, have I saved it to the database yet? So what's a really important method or something that I'm going to have to build here? Save, right? And what should save look like? Should it be an instance method or a class method? A class method, so when I build an instance of fan, I'm going to call the entire class? No? What do we think?
You need a class variable for it.
What do you mean?
Like you need to have a add all. So you can have
Ooh.
objects.
Okay, so what Alec is saying is we need this guy, right? Cool. Now, I'm going to argue with you. I love arguing, so that's a good thing. Okay. I'm going to say, what was the purpose of us having this at all? What did this thing do for us in the past? Yeah,
Collected all,
Grace.
collected all of our objects into a single array.
Yes, it collected all of our objects into a single array. That's right. This basically was how we saved these objects before, right? But now, instead of having this array that lives when we fire up our Ruby program and dies the second we turn it off, what do we now have to store all of our fans? A database. And so instead of using a class variable, we're now going to literally be using the database to store everything. So now what we have to do is think about how are we going to twist these class methods and instance methods into working with the database as the single source of truth, as what's holding all of our data, rather than these flimsy, short-lived variables. Yeah, Alec.
You say that objects were rows and its variables were the columns.
Yes.
Is that what we're going to do?
Yeah. So if we're talking about, if we have this new Ruby object called fan, which has a name and an artist ID, how would we save that to the database? Like, how would we build this method? Yeah, Kenny?
You could write some SQL to insert
Okay.
some the instance variables that you're creating when you're creating a new instance.
Okay, cool. So let's write some SQL to save the instance. That's exactly what we want to do. What is that going to look like? Want to give it a shot?
Yeah. You could say SQL or whatever variable name you want.
Okay, SQL's fine, SQL. And then what's my, does anyone remember the syntax?
Less than
Cool.
SQL.
Awesome. Cool. And then what is this going to look like in here?
Insert and then the table name. Insert it. And then the columns that you want to insert into.
Okay, and how do I write that? Do you remember?
Parentheses. I guess if you're keeping the column names the same.
Yep.
Name and artist ID.
What do I have to do here? What's the syntax? Like that?
I guess we have. So you could do fans.name, fans.artist ID.
Okay. I think we're inserting into fans, so we already, I think we'll be fine with just name and artist ID. Does anybody remember the syntax? You can look it up. It was in from lecture yesterday. What's that?
It's a comma.
Okay, so the commas, name and artist ID, cool. And then what are we missing? What do we need? Values. And how do we write that?
Values. And then parentheses. And then you could do
Question marks. So I'm inserting into fans name and artist ID values of and oh. Okay, cool. And how would I fire this thing off?
you do db.execute. Parentheses. Like capital DB, I guess.
Thank you.
And then the SQL code you just wrote. So SQL. And then comma. And then you have to substitute in for the question marks.
And what are they going to be?
Add name. Or, yeah. Or you could do self.name. Self.person.
I like it. What do you guys think? Think this will work? Okay, let's try it out. So I have in my console, remember, let's make this, I know you need to be bigger, right? Okay, bigger, clear this out. Okay, bigger. Okay. And the Grinch's heart grew 4 times too big. That's a little big. Okay. Okay. So let's check this out and see what's going on. What do I need to do to kick this thing off? What's my first domino, Mohammed?
You need file. bin/run.rb.
You got it. Okay, now I'm inside of this pry console. A little bit extraneous, right? Okay, how's that? Good? So what do I want to see here? Does anybody want, somebody, I'll type whatever anybody wants. What do you guys want to see? Name? Oh. Banana. Okay.
You just make a new class.
Do I? I don't know. What are we doing here? Did we lose sight of what's going on? Oops, I don't want clear. So what I've done is, like Mohammed said, I've kicked off into my pry console, so now I have access to all the code around me. Remember everything I put in the config file? I've got access to my classes, or the only class that I have right now anyway. Alec, what do you want to see?
We can start calling our class functions. Like we can start creating a class object and start.
We could, yeah. So like we have this fan class, right? Fan. I've got my DB connection, which right now just kind of looks like this, and we can see that it looks like an instance of database, which is namespace inside of SQLite 3, and it has this ID or memory reference or whatever the hell it is, and it looks like it's got a whole bunch of whatever these things are. Okay, so let's start playing. So what did we want to do here? We just built this awesome save. So how can we test this thing out? Kenny?
Create a new instance of fan.
Cool. And what do we want to? You get to choose. What do you want?
Say fan.new.
Ah. Okay. Dan. And what? And I don't have our. I can't look up our artists real quick. So you're just gonna have to guess at an artist ID.
173.
Do we have that many artists on our table yesterday?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Okay, that looks good. We have an artist ID, we have a name. Let's make this just a little small, so we can at least fit on one line. That's still okay, guys? Okay. So now what do we want to try? This new method we just built? Huh, did that work?
So DBCon, right?
What's that?
It needs to be DBCon on line 25.
So I'm glad you said that. When I defined my environment variable, what Paul just said is shouldn't that be dbcon? It would need to be dbcon if I had done this. If I had created db and made it a hash, which is a pattern you might see. Basically, we're saying that this database is not just an instance of the class, but it's also an object that has different. So we can attach different keys and values to it. I just was kind of lazy, and I said, well, this is just going to be DB, and I'm not worried about making it a hash. Yeah, Alec?
Is the reason for that we might have multiple connections at once?
If we had multiple connections, they wouldn't. I guess we could put them under the same variable. I don't know.
Why do people do that?
I don't know why we would do that in particular. You might want to attach something else to this object for whatever reason. I don't know. Can anybody else think of a good reason to do that?
There are just other properties you might want to store with the information about the database.
Yeah, maybe you want to say, oh, here, well, yes, exactly. Like, here's one example. Suppose that you wanted there to be like what you call this thing. You could say db name equals my awesome table, or my awesome database. Sorry. So like, there's an example. You could give it a name. There's kind of a measly, weak example, contrived, but whatever. So you might just, if you wanted to add new attributes, then you could do that. But right now, I just put it into a single variable called db, so I don't have to do dbcon. So like, how can we kind of test this and see what can I run to see if this worked? Like, doesn't look like I returned anything.
Execute select star.
Cool. Select star from, sorry, I'm being lazy. Like that?
Oh, no, you don't need the.
I don't? Hey, cool, look. Did it work? Did it work? It worked, right? So it looks like this thing, if we go into fan, it looks like this thing was able to insert it, but for whatever reason, why did we get this empty array back? It doesn't return. It didn't return it for us, right? So, what's that?
Map it.
Map it. Well, I'm not gonna. You're gonna execute. You know, I could map it, I guess. What would I map it to? I could map it. I could also like turn around and do something kind of ridiculous, like immediately turn around and execute select star from fans where name is this right? Right? Now is that going to return it for us? Should, right? So basically what we're learning is that these different DB, running the execute method on DB is going to end up with different return values. So basically I'm creating this thing and I'm turning right around and asking for it back from the database. Does that make sense? I mean, it may not make perfect sense, but let's make a new fan. Let's see. Zach, you with a CH or a CK? CH. Zach, and you're a fan of number, oops. Oh, you can't do that for 13. Okay, and look, I got it back. You guys see that? See the difference? So you're right, Shirley, we could have mapped it. There's different ways that we could run this. But I just want you to see that all you see here on these, every time you run a Ruby command, you're going to get the return value of that command. Remember, everything's an expression. Everything's going to get evaluated. Everything has a return value, even if it's nil. And it looks like the return value of save of DB execute, I should say, is an empty array. And we decided we didn't like that, so let's turn around and grab the same thing back from the database. Right? There's different ways we could do that. Is everybody okay with this so far? It's making sense. So like, we kind of have a choice too. Like this initialize .new, we could run it through the database immediately. I could say something like, could I say self.save? Would that immediately save it for us? What do you guys think? Do you want to try it? Let's try it. First, I'm going to say DB just to make sure that we're not going crazy here. Execute. What's that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to reset. I never use my reset fan table. Okay, cool. So fan all is empty, which we didn't even talk about that yet. But so if I say fan.new, I say Howard. He loves artist number apparently 34, obviously, and looks like that worked okay, right? Ooh, that didn't work. That's okay. All right, so we've got this save method working. Right now, it's working as soon as we initialize. I'm not sure if I really like that. Now that is a pattern that we're going to deviate away from. But right now, since we're running really low on time, we're going to kind of keep pushing off a little bit, or keep pushing forward. And let's talk about this self.all method that I have down here. Kind of want to like put it all by itself here, just for now, just so we're just focusing on it. Okay. So what is what do you think self.all should do? What's that? Yeah, return like everything in the table, right? So like if I say db.execute, actually I just had it, right? Oh, Wait a minute. Now, why are we not getting this back? My screen is so huge, I have to back up. Saved. Self.save. Did we not? Barney, what are you feeling for a number here? So I'm getting back my fan here, but it doesn't look like.
Well, did you create fans again? Or
Did
you
I?
are getting return value from database, so
Yeah. Well, I don't know if this is coming back from the database. I think this is just my Ruby object. Something's funky here. Because if I select all from fans, I'm getting nothing back.
the table exists?
It should, yeah. If a table didn't exist, I would get a big fat error here saying that can't find table fans. So if I say db.execute drop, I'm just gonna be lazy right now. Drop table fans, and I say I got this horrible error. So what's my method that I can reset this database with, or this table with? Cool. So let me just try and debug this here. Why was this not working? Fan.new Howard. Okay. Alternate Howard, who has an evil favorite number of 35. And now I'm getting it back appropriately. Oh, duh. No?
Is your select all working now?
What's that?
If you do select all from, does that give you?
Yeah, now I've got it back. Now it's there.
Cool.
What version of the code have you got in Prime?
What's that?
Did you reload Prime since you added the save method to initialize?
I must have, because it save worked when I called it by itself. It didn't work when I called it from the initialize method.
Did it call from initialize? You added it to initialize.
Oh, I think you're right. I don't think I ever did this. Thank you. So now if I say Howard equals Howard.new, Howard.new. I don't like the sound of this. Let's say Ian, you feeling a good number? I didn't let Barney choose, but I'll let you choose. 17, okay, good number. Undefined method fan. Man, it is lunchtime for sure. Okay, and uh-oh, I don't know if I like that. I don't think I do. Okay, good, it worked. No, it didn't. All right, so we're having technical difficulties here. But that's okay, because this is a pattern. This is a pattern we're actually going to avoid. We're not. what we're going to see going forward is we don't want our initialize, our new, to be saving to the database right away. There's a couple of reasons for that. Can anybody think of any reasons why we're not going to be doing this? Besides that I failed miserably to get it to work. I forget, who was I talking to the other day? Before we put any data into a database, what do we want to make sure we do with it? Anybody think what we don't want to go in the database? Who's hungry and has no sugar left in their blood? It's like, I can't deal with any more of this data.
You gotta make sure it's not already in there.
Pardon?
Make sure it's not already in there.
Okay, we want to make sure that we don't get duplicates. What else?
Want to make sure it's correct.
Yes, we want to make sure it's correct. We want to make sure we don't have duplicates. We want to make sure it's not what? We want to make sure North Korea or Russia or whoever isn't sending us malicious scripts and SQL injections. Hashtag good blog topic. Okay. You guys want to talk about what's a malicious SQL injection?
I think you used to be able to query stuff from the URL bar, and I don't know how it works now. But
Okay.
you can inject, like, pull from tables if they're not super
That's right. There's a way of doing it there's a way of injecting stuff straight from the URL. But here's your classic. Are you guys familiar with this cartoon XKCD? Okay, has anyone seen this one before? Right. What's going on here? Now that you guys know. Hi, this is your son's school. We're having some computer trouble. Oh dear, did he break something? Well, in a way. Did you really name your son Robert? End string, end parenthesis, semicolon, drop, table students, semicolon, dash, dash? Why yes, little Bobby tables we call it? Why does it? Well, we've lost the entire student's records. I hope you're happy, and I hope you learned to sanitize your database records. Okay. So why did this work? Why did this work?
Tell the syntax to end the command and then start a new command.
Right. So somewhere in there, we're going to insert into students, and then what he does is, for the name, he ends the query that's happening, starts a new SQL command, drop table students, ends it, and then dash dashes. So anything after that's a comma. Right? Right? So this is a light-hearted example of what we want to avoid. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and stop lecture because it's 12:05, which means everyone's starving. I don't know if we're going to have time. Maybe we could do like a round 2, or at the very least, I'll record a new session to sort of append onto this so we go a little further. Thanks for your attention, guys.